Costumed photo projects can sound like a lot of fun, but if you don't put some thought into it, they can end up looking like you took a photo of your kids in the hallway prior to heading out for trick-or-treating on Halloween. No frame of reference, no story. The costume can be super cool, but if you've simply set a person up in your studio with a plain backdrop, you probably won't end up with the impact that you desire. I have done many costumed projects with myself as the subject in my time as the Snap Chick, and I have some tips for you. Some are simple, some are more involved, but they're all homegrown right here in my studio. Or at least the idea started here. Sometimes I've gone outside or into my garage to take photos, but the point is that they're generally inexpensive. I will share how I used some of these tips and share photos in this video. In case you're new here, hello, my name is Leigh. I have been sharing videos here on YouTube for more than a decade on a variety of topics, but always having something to do with photography. I would love it if you would subscribe and give this video a like if at any point you find it helpful or at least entertaining. My first tip is to save money when purchasing gear by purchasing used. This portion of the video is sponsored by KEH. They have been a sponsor on this channel for a year now, but I was a customer prior to that. If you aren't familiar with KEH, they are the original re-commerce company, buying, selling, and trading photography gear for over 40 years. They have a wide variety of gear to purchase, both in terms of brands, of cameras and lenses, but also in terms of other things like lighting or tripods or accessories. Last weekend, Raymond and I were in another section of the website. We were looking at manual focus lenses. We have been keeping an eye out for a certain 35mm Nikon manual focus lens, and they had it, but we were headed out on a trail run, so we were just going to purchase it when we got back. And it was already gone when we got back. So I am keeping an eye on the back in stock section of the site. I'll be snapping up that lens as soon as I see it come back. Of course, you can also sell your gear to KEH so that you have some extra dollars and so that someone else can find happiness with something new to them. I have both bought and sold quite a bit of gear to KEH in the last couple of years, both high-end and entry-level, newish and quite a bit older, and I appreciate their transparency every time. I'm obviously enthusiastic about them. I joined their affiliate program, which means that if you use my links and codes that are listed in the description of this video, you will receive a discount on your purchase of used gear or a bonus on the sale of your used gear. And then I receive a small commission, which helps me to continue to make videos like this every week on this channel. So thank you to KEH for sponsoring this portion of the video, and thank you to those of you who use those links. Okay, on to my tips. My tips today revolve around weaving a tale with these photos rather than simply showing off the costume. And my tips run the gamut of pretty simple to a little more involved. I think I said that before. So let's start with my work in the studio with the simple part, and we'll go from there. In the studio, beginning with one of the most basic ideas. For this angelic costume, I gathered some very inexpensive white tulle fabric on the ground in front of myself to mimic clouds. I could see trying to use different types of fabric to spread on the ground or to drape in the background for different types of costumes. And speaking of backgrounds, for this droid-like costume, I actually cut into one of my seamless roll paper backdrops. I then pulled the white paper backdrop down behind it and illuminated it from behind. Because I then positioned myself as far away as I could from the backdrop, I was able to have it blurred out and looking a little like a certain ill-fated spaceship. This also wasn't the last time I cut into a backdrop. I poked holes in another one of them, illuminated it from behind again, and created stars. Now, cutting into the backdrop seems like a big deal, but that's kind of the beauty of the roll paper backdrop. After I was done, I cut the cut up part off and rolled down some clean paper. Another way I have created an environment in the studio is with an inexpensive smoke machine. I used my black backdrop so that it would just kind of fade away into the shadows, and then I added the smoke to create a mysterious ambiance. One word of caution here though, I moved my studio into the garage for this one because the smoke machine, unsurprisingly, sets off smoke alarms. Still in the studio, and probably the most time-consuming of my Halloween projects, was this composite image, where I mimicked a famous music video playing the part of 5 people. This was captured in my studio, but I masked out the background and the floor to look similar to the video. It was an ambitious project at the time, but now more than one editing application has a sky replacement tool that could turn your studio into most anything you want. And then moving out of the studio. Here I still use studio lighting, but I was in my kitchen. I did the shoot at night so that it was dark out. I separated myself from anything in the background, and I placed a cauldron on the table in front of me. I used darkness as a tool here to hide the suburban home surroundings and the fact that my witchy cauldron was actually plastic. Okay, getting out of the studio is an easy way to create ambiance because you aren't simply standing in front of a backdrop. For this deer costume, I found an area of forest that wasn't heavily trafficked because I did not want people to see me trotting around with antlers on, and I used the trees as my background because that's where deer live. And then for this spookier take on Little Red Riding Hood, I brought a bunch of props to the woods. When using the outdoors, time of day is important. For example, for Red Riding Hood, I went out just before sunrise, so the woods were still a little bit dark because I wanted a spooky atmosphere. Something that just came up is props. Things like having the picnic basket full of food for my not so nice Red Riding Hood, or the cauldron for my witch. They help tell the story that goes along with the costume, and similarly, when outside, having your subject interact with the environment, use the environment in a way that makes sense with the costume. For example, my deer hiding behind the tree. In fact, I find that coming up with a story for the project and working the environment and the props around that, and actually sharing that story with your subject so that they can think about it while posing, will give you the best results. And like I said, it's fine to capture just a photo of someone in a costume. In fact, for this project, I wanted a plain, bright look of a background because I was dressed up as 2 iconic comic book characters. And these comics typically didn't have a lot of detailed environments, so it was true to the costume. But in general, when you create the environment, whether you are in the studio or elsewhere, the photo will come to life. If you have any questions about costumed photography, let me know in the comments below. And remember, I did share links to KEH in the description of this video as well, in case you need something new or you want to sell some of your gear. Thank you again to KEH for continuing to support this channel, and thank you for watching.